The machine costs more than a small country's annual budget. It runs the entire global infrastructure of the most powerful corporation on Earth. And it just broke. Not a glitch, not a lag. Completely catastrophically dead. Every engineer in the building is frozen. 47 PhDs, 6 AI-assisted diagnostic systems, and a response team flown in from 3 different countries. All standing around this thing like it personally offended them. Nobody moves. Nobody speaks because nobody knows what to do. And then someone suggests calling the street shop. That's when the room goes silent in a different way. The kind of silent where everybody is trying very hard not to laugh because laughing at that suggestion would mean admitting how desperate they actually are. But here's the thing. The director, the cold, unsmiling, absolutely terrifying director of the most technologically advanced facility in the nation doesn't dismiss it. She just says, "Get him." And that's where our story starts. Go back 3 days earlier. A narrow alley, cracked pavement, a hand-painted sign that says CEO's Repair, hanging slightly crooked above a shuttered metal door. The shop is barely bigger than a convenience store bathroom. The kind of place you walk past and assume is either a front for something or just forgotten by time. Inside, a young man is hunched over a workbench surrounded by gutted electronics, spare wires, and what appears to be the skeleton of an industrial-grade processor that has absolutely no business being in this neighborhood. That young man is CEO Jihan, 23 years old, no university degree, no corporate affiliation, no certification that any professional licensing board would recognize. His clothes are permanently stained with solder and machine oil. He eats instant noodles 4 days out of 7. His shop generates enough revenue to cover rent, supplies, and exactly 1 luxury per month, which is a single premium can of coffee, which he nurses for 3 days like it's medicine. By every external metric, Jihan is nobody. But the machine he's casually fixing right now was declared irreparable by 3 separate specialists last week. The client paid $40,000 to have it looked at. All 3 specialists handed it back and said, "Sorry, nothing can be done." Jihan quoted $1,200. He delivered it in 2 days. The client didn't believe it worked at first. She powered it up 3 times just to check. Then she paid, stood in the doorway, stared at him for a long moment like she was trying to solve a puzzle, and left without another word. That's basically every client Jihan gets. They come in skeptical. They leave confused and slightly unsettled because what Jihan does is not normal. It's not education. It's not experience. It's not even talent in the traditional sense. It's something else. The system appeared when Jihan was 16. He doesn't talk about it. He doesn't explain it to anyone. As far as the world is concerned, he's just a weird, quietly brilliant mechanic who lives in an alley and undercharges for miracles. But inside his own head, there's a completely different reality running. The moment Jihan looks at any machine, any system, any circuit, any mechanical structure at any level of complexity, a full diagnostic overlay activates in his vision, complete, instant, exact. He sees failure points the way most people see color. He sees load stress on components the way you see a bruise on skin. He knows with a precision that should be impossible, exactly what is wrong, what caused it, how far the damage has spread, and in what exact order it needs to be addressed. It's like having the world's most advanced engineering AI hardwired behind his eyes. Except it's not an AI. It's just him. He has no idea why. It started the day after a nearly fatal accident when he was 16. The kind of accident that should have killed him, probably based on all available evidence. He woke up in a hospital bed, looked at the fluorescent light fixture above him, and suddenly knew in precise detail that the third wiring connection was fractionally loose and would cause a flicker fault in approximately 11 days. He didn't tell anyone about that either. It took him about 6 months to understand what had happened to him. Another year to figure out how to use it, and then he just started fixing things. Small things at first, household appliances, old radios, a neighbor's broken washing machine. Then word spread the way word always spreads in tight neighborhoods. And soon people were bringing him bigger things, more complex things. He never turned anything away and he never failed. But there are 2 problems with being CEO Jihan. The first is that nobody in the right circles knows about him. Which means he stays poor, invisible, and underutilized in ways that would make any rational observer want to flip a table. The second, and this is the one that matters for today's story, is that certain people in certain circles have heard rumors. Vague ones, second and third-hand accounts, that some guy in an alley somewhere can fix things that shouldn't be fixable. Most powerful people dismiss those rumors. Most directors would ignore them entirely. Director Yoon Sara is not most people. Director Yoon Sara is 31 years old, which is about 15 years younger than anyone expected to hold her position. She's the kind of person who makes experienced executives nervous just by walking into the room. Not because she's cruel, though she can be, but because she is relentlessly, exhaustingly competent and she has absolutely no tolerance for theater. If you're performing rather than solving, she will end your role in the meeting within 30 seconds and you'll spend the next 20 minutes wondering how it happened. She runs the research and infrastructure division of Zhangqua Group, which is the largest private tech conglomerate in the country. Her division is responsible for, among other things, the Ares system. Ares is the machine that just died. Full name: Adaptive Recursive Intelligence System. It's not just a computer. It's the central nervous system of Zhangqua's entire R&D architecture. Every high-level project in every department runs through Ares. It processes, simulates, integrates, and coordinates. It's been running continuously for 4 years. It has never malfunctioned until 3 days ago when it went completely dark. The cost of every hour Ares stays offline is not something Director Yoon announces out loud, but every hour it stays dark, something dies in the background. A deadline missed, a simulation paused, a competitor inching forward in a race she cannot afford to lose. Her engineers have been working in rotating shifts. They are phenomenal engineers, top of their field, recruited globally. Several of them have worked on systems that make most government tech look like a science fair project. None of them can figure out what happened to Ares. Not just how to fix it. They can't even identify the failure point, which is the part that's keeping Director Yoon awake at night. Because a failure with no identifiable cause is not a malfunction. It's something else. On the morning of day 3, after the 4th round of failed diagnostics, Director Yoon asks everyone to clear the room. When only her senior assistant remains, she slides a single piece of paper across the desk. It's a name, an address, and a short paragraph of second-hand information from a source she won't disclose even to her senior staff. "Find out if this is real," she says. Her assistant looks at the address. His expression doesn't change because he's been trained not to let it change, but his thoughts are extremely loud. The address is in the Mangwon district in an alley. The establishment listed is something called CO's Repair. "You want me to contact a street-level repair shop?" he says carefully regarding Ares. "I want you to find out if the person who runs it is what the source says he is," Director Yoon says. "If the answer is yes, bring him here. And if he refuses," she doesn't answer that, just looks at him until he stops asking questions and leaves. Jihan is eating noodles when the car pulls up. Not a regular car, a car that costs approximately 100 times the monthly revenue of his shop. Matte black, clean in the way that only cars that are never parked on actual streets are clean. A man in a suit steps out. Jihan watches from behind the window, noodle container in one hand, chopsticks halfway to his mouth. The suited man looks at the alley. He looks at the sign. He looks at the shop. His expression cycles through several emotions very quickly and lands on determined resignation. He knocks on the door. Jihan answers. "CO Jihan?" the man asks. "Depends on who's asking." The man introduces himself, explains in the most carefully neutral language possible that a company is seeking specialized technical assistance with a high-priority system failure. Jihan finishes his noodle bite. "What system?" "I can't say here." "Then I can't say yes here." There's a pause. "The compensation," the man says, "would be substantial." "I don't really care about substantial," Jihan says. The man blinks. "I'm sorry. I care about interesting." "Is it interesting?" Another pause. This one longer. "I've been told," the man says carefully, "that no one has been able to identify the failure mode." Jihan sets down his noodle container. "What's the system?" They won't tell him until he signs an NDA so thick it has its own table of contents. He reads the entire thing, which takes 20 minutes, during which the assistant stands very still and tries not to look at the condition of the floor. Jihan signs. They hand him a single briefing page. He reads Ares's description twice. Then he puts the page down and looks out the window for a moment. "Okay." He says, "Okay, you'll come. Okay, this is going to be interesting." The Zhangqua Group headquarters building is 40 stories of glass and steel that makes most government buildings look like apologetic suggestions. The lobby alone has better air than most apartments. There are people in this building whose annual salary would rewrite Jihan's entire history. He arrives wearing jeans, a slightly faded jacket, and work boots that have seen genuinely serious use. The lobby staff manage their expressions professionally. Jihan doesn't notice. He's already looking at the environmental control panel near the entrance with an expression that says he's identified 3 calibration issues in the last 15 seconds. They take him to the 41st floor, Director Yun's floor. The elevator opens and she's already there waiting, which is not something Director Yun typically does. She doesn't wait for people. People wait for her, but she needs to see this the moment it walks off the elevator. She needs to take her own measure before anyone else can frame it. What she sees is a young man who's shorter than she expected, slightly underdressed, and currently looking at the hallway ceiling with a focused expression of someone who just noticed something that everyone else missed. There's a thermal regulation fault in the east corridor duct, he says before she can speak. Probably been there 8 to 10 weeks. It's not critical yet, but your server cooling intake is running 2.3 degrees warmer than optimal. You'll feel it in the east wing system latency in about a month. Director Yun stares at him. Hello, she says. Hello. He looks at her. You're the director. I am. You look tired. The entire hallway tenses. Director Yun blinks once. I haven't slept properly in 3 days. Ares. He nods. Take me to it. The Ares chamber is in sublevel 3. It is without question the most expensive room Jihan has ever stood in. Every surface is engineered. The atmospheric controls alone represent more innovation than most countries' national tech budgets. It's cool, quiet, and absolutely still. The machine itself, if you can call it that, because Ares is a kind of distributed architecture that fills most of the chamber in modular clusters, looks completely inert. Dead in a way that machines shouldn't look dead. Not powered down, just stopped. All 47 of Xianqua's engineers are present, which means the room is very full and very quiet. They watch this guy walk in wearing work boots. Someone whispers something. It gets a small laugh. Jihan walks straight to the nearest Ares cluster and puts his hand on the housing. His system activates and the information that floods his vision in the next 4 seconds is unlike anything he has ever processed. Okay, let's talk about what Jihan sees. Because Ares is not broken in a normal way. Any of the 47 engineers in this room would tell you that the power systems are functional. The hardware integrity checks out on every module. The connectivity architecture is intact. There's nothing physically wrong with this machine. What Jihan sees, what his ability reveals in precise, merciless detail is something that doesn't have a name in conventional engineering. Ares didn't malfunction. Ares stopped itself. Not a crash, not a failure cascade, not a bug. Something in the machine's recursive processing loops hit a condition it wasn't designed to handle. And rather than push through and corrupt everything, it found a way to simply pause. It's protecting itself from what? Jihan moves slowly through the chamber, touching cluster after cluster, reading each module like a page in a book. The engineers watch him. The silence is no longer dismissive. It's something different now, careful waiting. He stops at a specific cluster in the far north corner. The one that looks externally identical to every other cluster in the room. He crouches in front of it. This one, he says. Director Yun steps forward. That's Tertiary Coordination Module 7. It's been checked twice. The diagnostics show it's clean. Your diagnostics are checking for what they know how to check for. Jihan says, this isn't that. He looks up at her. Can someone bring me a level 3 disassembly kit and about 4 meters of optical trace cable? A pause. Also, instant noodles if you have them. This is going to take a while. Nobody brings the noodles. They do bring the kit. What follows is 6 hours that nobody in that room will ever fully describe to outsiders. Partly because they signed NDAs and partly because they're not entirely sure they understood what they watched. Jihan works without stopping, without consulting documentation, without asking anyone for their assessment or their data or their 3-day diagnostic history. He moves through the module with the kind of targeted precision that makes the engineers, again among the best in the country, feel like they're watching something outside their frame of reference. He doesn't explain what he's doing. He just does it. At hour 2, he finds the actual problem. It's not a defect in Ares. It's an intrusion. A very, very sophisticated intrusion that was designed specifically to not look like an intrusion. It mimicked a natural recursive processing error so perfectly that Ares' own self-diagnostic systems couldn't classify it. So, Ares did the only thing it could without a confirmed threat ID. It stopped. The machine had effectively recognized that something was wrong without being able to say what and shut down rather than let unknown code propagate through its full architecture. In a strange way, Ares saved itself. And someone tried very hard to make sure no one would figure that out. Jihan looks at the code structure of the intrusion, mapped now in clear readable traces across the optical line, and feels something cold move through him. This isn't a corporate espionage hack. This isn't even a nation-state level intrusion attempt, though it's close. This is something engineered by someone who understood Ares' architecture from the inside. He doesn't say any of this yet. He just starts working on the extraction. The full removal takes another 4 hours. Director Yun doesn't leave the room once. She stands, changes position occasionally, drinks 3 cups of coffee, and watches. She has watched a lot of people work in her career. She is a precise internal model for competence. What she's watching now sits outside that model in a way she is still calibrating. At hour 6, Jihan straightens up, sets down his tools, and says, "Restart sequence manual initialization on cluster group 3 through 9. Then let it cascade. Don't trigger the auto boot. Give it the room." The chief engineer looks at Director Yun. She nods. They follow the sequence exactly. The silence in the room stretches and then Ares comes back on. Not dramatically, not with lights and sound, just a quiet, deep hum that rises steadily through the chamber, and then the monitoring screens around the room begin to populate with data. Green across every board, every module, every connection point, fully operational, no error flags, no warnings. For a moment, nobody speaks. Then someone at the back says very quietly, "Holy." Director Yun silences them with a look. Then she looks at Jihan. "How?" She says, not a question, more like a word she needed to say out loud. "Your machine is fine," Jihan says. "But you have a bigger problem." He pulls up the trace map he's been building on a secondary tablet. It's a detailed architectural diagram of the intrusion. Every layer, every disguise, every integration point. This was built by someone who had full internal documentation access. He says the architecture mirrors match too precisely for anything else. You have a leak in your design division, possibly multiple points. The room temperature changes. The intrusion itself is extracted, he continues. But whoever wrote this knows Ares better than most of the people in this room. And when they find out it didn't work, they'll try something else. Director Yun stares at the trace map. "Can you identify the source?" She says. "I can tell you what to look for," Jihan says. "Whether you can find them is a different question." She looks at him, something in her expression that isn't quite any single emotion. "How much do we owe you?" she says. Jihan looks around the room at the engineers, at the machine, at the trace map. "How much is Ares worth to your operation?" "I won't answer that question." "Then charge me what you think is fair." She almost smiles. "That's not how payment works." "No," he agrees. "But I'd rather not spend 20 minutes negotiating when you have a security crisis to handle." A pause. "Name a number," she says. He does. It is by every measure absurdly low. Director Yun looks at him for a long moment. "That's what you want?" "That's what I want." "Why?" He picks up his jacket. "Because the problem was interesting." That's already most of the payment. He's almost to the elevator when she stops him. "Co Jihan." He turns. "You identified a design-level intrusion in a machine you'd never seen before." She says, "In 6 hours without any of our documentation." He waits. "I want to know how." "Natural talent," he says. She doesn't look like she accepts that. "What's your educational background?" "Does it matter to me?" "Yes." "High school." "Incomplete." Another beat of silence. "What do you want?" She says, "Actually, not for this job in general." "What are you doing in a repair shop in Mangwon?" Jihan considers the question. "Fixing things," he says, "things that don't need to be fixed by you specifically. Things that wouldn't get fixed otherwise." She looks at him. "That sounds like a waste," she says. "From where you're standing, maybe." The elevator arrives. He gets in just before the doors close. Director Yun says, "I'll be in touch." The doors close. Jihan rides down 40 floors, hands in his jacket pockets, looking at the elevator panel, noting 3 minor calibration issues in the floor sensor array. Back in the alley, back in the shop, Jihan finishes the noodles he abandoned 8 hours ago. Cold now, but still fine, and sits back in his chair and stares at the ceiling. He's fixed a lot of things. He's fixed things that baffled engineers who cost 10 times his annual income per hour. He's fixed things and watched the clients walk away either amazed or unsettled or both. He's been doing this for years. But Ares is different because Ares didn't just break. Ares was attacked by someone with access and intent and patience and frankly a level of technical sophistication that's quietly staggering. Jihan sits with that for a while. Whoever built that intrusion, they didn't need Ares to fail permanently. A permanent failure would have triggered a full security investigation immediately. What they needed was a disruption timed precisely, long enough to interrupt something specific. He pulls out the tablet he used in the Ares chamber. The trace map he built, the timing architecture of the intrusion, the schedule on which it was designed to activate isn't random. It was designed to trigger exactly 3 weeks before something. Jihan doesn't know what this something is, but it's there in the code like a countdown, quiet and exact. He stares at the map, 3 weeks from the intrusion point, which means he does the math 6 days from now. He tells himself it's not his problem. He did his job. He fixed the machine. He named his price, said his goodbyes, and came back to the alley. He's not a security consultant. He's not a corporate analyst. He's a guy with a broken down shop and a supernatural ability to see what's wrong with machines. And those two things are quite sufficient for the life he's currently living. He tells himself this for about an hour. Then he picks up the card Director Yun's assistant left on the table. He looks at it for a while. Then he sets it back down. Then he picks it up again. The call connects on the first ring, not the assistant. Director Yun herself. I was wondering, she says like she already knew. The intrusion had a timing structure. Jihan says designed to activate 3 weeks before a fixed event. Something that's happening 6 days from now. I don't know what the event is, but whoever built this does, and they didn't do this for no reason. A pause. Can you send me the timing data? She says. Already transmitted it to the contact address on the card. Another pause. How are you looking at this from your phone? She says the trace map was on a secure internal tablet. You didn't wipe the connection tunnel before I left. Jihan says the tablet maintained a passive link for 14 minutes post-session. I pulled the map file before it closed. The silence on the line is extremely specific in character. That's a security breach, Director Yun says. Yes, Jihan agrees. You committed it also. Yes. Why? Because I needed the map to figure out the timing structure and the map was on your tablet. A pause that might contain a suppressed sound. You're not currently authorized to have that data, she says. I know. And you're calling to tell me about it anyway. I'm calling to tell you about the 6-day window, Jihan says. The data thing is a secondary issue. I see. Her voice is perfectly even. What do you suggest we do about both of these issues? Hire me properly, Jihan says. For the security problem, not the machine. The machine's done, but whoever did this is going to try again before that 6-day window closes, and next time they'll know the straightforward approach didn't work. You want to consult on corporate security. I want to find whoever built that intrusion because that thing was elegant, and I want to know what else they can do. A long pause. That's a strange reason to request employment, Director Yun says. I have strange reasons for most things. Your qualifications. You just watched me fix your most advanced system in 6 hours when 47 qualified people couldn't do it in 3 days, Jihan says. We can discuss qualifications or we can discuss the 6-day window. One of those conversations is more useful. The pause this time is shorter. Come in tomorrow morning, Director Yun says. 9 o'clock. I'll be there. And CO Jihan. Yes. Delete the map file from whatever unsanctioned location you're storing it. Already done. When? About 30 seconds ago. The call ends. Jihan puts the phone down and looks around his shop. The gutted processors, the rows of components, the crooked sign out front. He won't close the shop. He's not going to do that. But he thinks maybe things are shifting. The next morning, he arrives at 9 precisely. Not in the same clothes. He has a jacket that's in marginally better condition than yesterday's. It's the best concession he's willing to make to a corporate environment. Director Yun is already in the conference room with 2 people Jihan hasn't met. One is a tall, severe-looking man she introduces as head of security, Cho Min-jun. The other is a small, intense woman she introduces as lead data forensics, Park Hannah. Both of them look at Jihan the way the lobby staff looked at him yesterday. He ignores it and sits down. Here's what I need, he says, and pulls out his own tablet. Both Cho and Park look at Director Yun. She raises an eyebrow at Jihan. Usually I run the meetings in my division. I'll run it faster, Jihan says. The eyebrow stays up, but she gestures for him to continue. He pulls up a reconstructed version of the trace map rebuilt from memory, which is something he doesn't explain, and walks them through the intrusion architecture, layer by layer, every mechanism, every disguise, every timing element. Cho stops him 6 minutes in. Wait, you're saying this was constructed to imitate a natural recursive fault? Specifically, a Category 4 anomaly? Yes, that's right. Cho glances at Park. Ares' category for self-diagnostic signature is in a document with clearance level 7 access. Correct, Jihan says. There are 11 people with that access, Park says quietly. I know, Jihan says. That's where you start. What follows over the next 72 hours is one of the more intense investigation sequences Jihan has been involved in. Which is notable because his previous most intense experience was fixing a runaway automated factory system while the factory was still running at full capacity with workers inside. But this is different. This is people, and people are messier than machines. The 11 Level 7 access holders are a mix of engineers, researchers, and 2 mid-level executives. All of them are interviewed. None of them are told exactly what they're being interviewed about. All of them show signs of stress because being called into a closed-door security review in a company like Zyanqua tends to do that whether you've done something or not. Jihan sits in on the interviews, not officially. He's positioned just outside the glass partition of the interview room, able to see but not be seen, watching each person with the quiet attention he usually reserves for machines. He can't read people the way he reads machines. His ability doesn't work that way. But 7 years of working alone, of dealing with every kind of client that walks through an alleyside shop door, of reading the room and the stakes and the emotional subtext of every interaction. That's not nothing. He watches all 11. And he identifies too. He presents his findings to Director Yun privately after the second day of interviews. 2 of them, he says. The lead thermal integration engineer, Kim Seo-jun, and the junior data coordinator, Bae Yuri. On what basis? Kim is technically brilliant enough to have built what we found. He's also been under financial pressure. I noticed the watch he was wearing on day 1 is not the watch he wore today. Different brand. Lower tier, quickly swapped when someone asked him about the first one, and he over-explained his access logs 3 times in ways that sounded memorized rather than recalled. Director Yun says nothing. Bae Yuri is the access point, not the architect. She has level 7 access, but she's not sophisticated enough to have built the intrusion. Someone used her credentials, probably without her full knowledge. She knows something happened. She's scared, but she doesn't know how much trouble she's in. You identified all of this watching people through glass. People and machines have more in common than people like to admit, Jihan says. Both of them have system states. Both of them have failure signatures. You just have to know what you're looking for. That's remarkably unsettling, Director Yun says. I know. She looks at the wall for a moment. Then if Kim built it, he had outside help. This wasn't internal motivation. Agreed, Jihan says. The sophistication of the timing architecture is above his documented research range. Someone guided him. Provided the specific elements he couldn't develop himself, which means there's a third party, which means the 6-day window isn't just relevant to Ares. Jihan says something is happening, something specific. Ares' downtime was designed to disable a system that would otherwise detect or prevent it. Director Yun stands up. I need to know what's happening 6 days from now, she says. That was my next question for you, Jihan says. She looks at him and then does something he hasn't seen her do in the 30 or so hours he spent in this building. She sits back down slowly. 3 days from now, she says, we're completing the final security verification for a government infrastructure contract, the largest in Zyanqua's history. Ares was going to run the final authentication sequence. Jihan stares at her. If Ares had still been down, he starts. We would have missed the verification window, she says. The contract would have defaulted to our competitor who has been in close talks with a foreign technical advisory group for the last 8 months. The quiet in the room is a different kind of quiet. This was industrial sabotage, Jihan says. Yes, at a government contract level. Yes. Whoever coordinated this didn't just want Zyanqua to lose the contract, he says. They wanted the contract to go to someone already compromised by a foreign advisory relationship. You understand corporate strategy, she says with something in her voice that isn't quite surprise, but is adjacent to it. I understand systems, Jihan says. This is a system. Somebody built an outcome they wanted and worked backwards through all the components required to produce it. Just like engineering. Director Yun looks at him for a long moment. We have a problem, she says. We have several, he agrees. Which one are we solving first? They work through the night. Jihan, Director Yun, Cho Min-jun, and Park Hana, a team assembled under circumstances that none of them would have predicted 72 hours ago. Built around a young man from a back alley shop who technically has no clearance for anything in this building. Director Yun handled the clearance issue by simply issuing a temporary security pass at the highest internal civilian level and filing the paperwork 2 hours later. Cho Min-jun looked at this and said nothing because Cho Min-jun is smart enough to know when the battle isn't worth picking. They mapped the full chain. Kim Seo-jun had been approached 8 months ago by an intermediary he believed to be a private research firm. He was offered a consulting arrangement, significant money, complete confidentiality, and very specific technical requests. He told himself it was parallel consulting. He told himself the requests were abstract, hypothetical, not actionable. He was lying to himself. Most people do. The intermediary, Park Hana, traces across 3 days of financial and communication forensics. Connects to a holding company that connects to a subsidiary of a foreign technical group that has a strategic relationship with Cyanqua's primary competitor. It's a long chain deliberately designed to be untraceable in the normal course of an investigation. But this investigation is not normal because Jihan's tracemap had something in it that nobody else would have found. A behavioral signature in the intrusion code itself, not a digital fingerprint, something more subtle, a problem-solving pattern. The way the architect approached the specific challenge of mimicking Ares's Category 4 signature revealed a particular style of technical thinking, a methodology. It's like handwriting, Jihan explains at 2 a.m. to 3 people who are running on coffee and adrenaline. Every engineer solves problems differently. The choices they make when they hit a constraint, what they optimize for, what they sacrifice, how they handle uncertainty. Those choices accumulate into a pattern. This pattern matches published research methodology from 3 papers co-authored by a specific external group. Park Hana pulls the papers. They all read the author list. Cho Min-jun says something under his breath. Director Yun doesn't react visibly, but the line of her jaw tightens by approximately 1 millimeter, which for Director Yun is the equivalent of anyone else in the room slamming a hand on the table. We have enough, she says, for a legal response. And for the contract verification, Jihan asks. She looks at the clock. We have approximately 60 hours. Ares can run the authentication, Jihan says. It's fully operational, but I want to add a monitoring layer during the sequence. If anyone attempts anything in that window, I want to see it happening in real time. You can do that. Yes. She looks at him. What do you need? He needs 48 hours of access to Ares's monitoring architecture. 2 technicians who can follow very specific instruction without asking why, and approximately 112 components from a very specific parts list, most of which he has to go back to his shop to get. The technicians drive him to Mangwon in the corporate car. They wait outside his shop while he goes in, navigates the organized chaos of his shelves, and emerges 12 minutes later with a bag that is significantly more organized than it looks. One of the technicians makes the mistake of looking inside the bag. And then immediately looks like he doesn't know what he's seeing. Jihan doesn't explain. They drive back. The monitoring layer Jihan builds in the next 30 hours is something that the Cyanqua security team, if they were honest, would admit is more sophisticated than their existing monitoring infrastructure. It doesn't just watch for intrusions, it predicts them. It models behavioral patterns based on the signature Jihan identified and creates detection thresholds for anything that even resembles that problem-solving methodology appearing in the system. It's essentially a trap built from the attacker's own fingerprint. Director Yun watches him install it. You build this from scratch, she says. Parts from my shop and some borrowed from your maintenance inventory. I'll document what I used. That's not. She stops. Starts again. How do you know how to build this? Jihan considers the question. I see how things work, he says. I see what they need. I build what fits. That's not an explanation. No, he agrees. She doesn't push further. He appreciates that about her actually. She identifies when pushing will produce more resistance than information and she stops. The authentication window opens at 8 o'clock on day 6. The government verification team is present. A team of 12 officials responsible for confirming the technical integrity of Zyanqua systems before the contract can be finalized. They're professional, thorough, and completely unaware of everything that has happened in this building over the last 6 days. Ares initializes the authentication sequence. In Sublevel 3, Jihan sits at a monitoring station watching. Cho Min-jun is beside him. Director Yun is upstairs with the verification team, holding herself perfectly still and looking completely composed while running on approximately 9 hours of sleep distributed across 6 days. The sequence runs 40 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes. At minute 97, the monitoring layer catches something. Jihan's screen lights up. A detection flag, small, precise, exactly matching the behavioral signature from the trace map. Someone is trying again. Not a full intrusion this time. Something much more surgical. A single-point intervention targeted specifically at the authentication output module designed to corrupt the final verification signature without triggering any of Ares' built-in security responses. They knew Ares was back up. They adapted. They did not know about the monitoring layer. Jihan watches the attempt unfold in real time. He doesn't stop it immediately. He watches it. He reads it the way he reads machines, tracking the logic, the structure, the problem-solving choices being made in real time. It's the same hand. He's certain at the exact moment the intervention reaches its execution point. The millisecond before it would have corrupted the output. He closes the trap. The behavioral signature is captured, timestamped, encrypted, and forwarded to 3 separate secure archives simultaneously. The intervention fails. The authentication sequence completes cleanly. On Jihan's screen, a single line of confirmation text appears. Ares reports successful output verification. He exhales. Cho Min-jun says very quietly, "Did that just work?" "Yes," Jihan says. "How certain are you?" Jihan looks at the screen at the captured signature at the completion status. "Completely," he says. Upstairs, Director Yun receives the confirmation from the verification team. Contract signed. She gives no visible reaction. She shakes hands with the lead government official, thanks his team, and walks them to the elevator with the composed, unhurried manner of someone for whom this result was never in question. Then she goes back to her office and closes the door. And for 30 seconds, she lets herself feel what this week has actually been. Then she picks up her phone and calls Sublevel 3. "It's done," she says. "I know," Jihan says. "The capture worked. You sound like you're eating something. Someone finally brought noodles." She almost laughs. "Come up when you're finished." He comes up. She's standing at her window looking out over the city. 40 stories down. Traffic moves with ordinary purpose. The evidence package from the capture has been transmitted to our legal team and the relevant government security office, she says. They'll act on Kim Seo-jun and trace the chain outward. It's out of our hands operationally now. Good. We're pursuing civil and potentially criminal action against the competitor subsidiary. Also good. She turns from the window. Ares is fully operational. The contract is secured. The perpetrators are identified. And the government has been briefed on the security implications. She pauses. You did most of this. You had competent people. I just pointed at the right things. Don't do that, she says not unkindly. He looks at her. Don't minimize it. She says, you came in from a back alley shop with no institutional authority, no clearance, no team, and fixed the single most complex system in this building. Then identified an industrial espionage operation. Then built a real-time behavioral trap that caught an active intervention during a live government verification sequence. She pauses. That deserves acknowledgement. Jihan is quiet for a moment. Okay, he says. Okay, she echoes. Then your contract. I don't have a contract. You will. I'm drafting it today. She moves to her desk. Senior Technical Consultant, Systems Architecture and Security. Flexible hours, remote capability. You keep the shop if you want it. He blinks. You want me on retainer. I want you on staff. Retainer implies we only call when something breaks. I'm not interested in that arrangement. She looks at him steadily. You see things other people don't see. That's not an occasional asset. That's a permanent one. Jihan looks at the window at the city below. I'm not going to wear a suit, he says. I don't recall requiring that. And I'm keeping the shop. Also not in question. And if something interesting comes in through the shop, your time is your own outside assigned projects, she says. The shop stays. He looks back at her. For the first time since walking into the building 6 days ago, something in his expression shifts. Not a smile exactly. Something quieter than that. Send me the contract, he says. He takes the subway back to the alley, declining the corporate car. Standing between commuters in his work jacket, tablet under his arm, carrying the parts bag back to where it came from. The shop is exactly as he left it. He hangs his jacket, puts the parts away in their correct positions, sits at the workbench, and opens the tablet. 3 new repair requests have come in while he was gone. Someone's automated brewing system, a collapsed diagnostic module from a medical imaging device, and a third. No description, just a name and an address in a part of the city that most people don't mention casually. He reads that third request 3 times. The address is the main facility of a company called Yanjin Systems, which he checks briefly, not a name with any public profile, no web presence, no corporate filings under that name at the primary registry. But the device they want repaired is described in technical language so precise, so accurate, so specific that whoever wrote this description knew exactly what they were describing. And it's a type of system that, as far as Jihan knows, has been in classified development for the last 4 years. He stares at the request. Then he looks around the shop at the crooked sign he's never bothered to fix because it felt right somehow, at the machines in various states of disassembly, at the life he built here, quiet and strange and exactly his. He picks up his phone, dials the number from the request. It rings twice. A voice answers, low, even, impossible to place. We were wondering when you'd call, it says. Jihan says nothing for a moment. What's wrong with the system? He asks. A pause. That's a longer conversation, the voice says. Are you available? Jihan looks at the tablet, at the 3 requests, at the third one with the impossible device and the address with no public record. When? He says. Now would be ideal, the voice says. We've been waiting some time. Waiting for what? Another pause, shorter. Waiting for someone who could actually fix it. The voice says, we've had others. The word others lands in a way that raises the back of Jihan's neck. He looks at the ceiling, at the shop, at the city outside his door. He picks up his jacket. Send me the address, he says. And just like that. Without permission, without preparation, without any of the institutional backing that most people would consider a minimum requirement for walking toward whatever that voice represents. CO Jihan closes his shop, steps out into the alley, and heads towards something that has been waiting for him a lot longer than 6 days. He has no idea what he's walking into, but it's interesting. And for Jihan, that's always been enough.